Greetings. Greetings, everybody. I hope that you are all doing very fine on this Sunday morning, June the 11th, 2023. I apologize for my voice. I Yesterday, me and Bill went out on a great adventure. We went to a party, stayed too late, and I guess being outside, anyway, so it's trying to all come back. So my apologies. So I want to talk about specific to the Brian Kohberger case, specific to the knife sheath. Okay, it's getting very difficult, I think, at this point to figure out all of the various narratives on social media without the luxury of having informed journalists that are putting out accurate information. It's just like the wild west, right? People are just making up stories and saying whatever they want to say and taking little facts and twisting it into something that it's completely not. Um, and so it's getting a bit confusing as to what's real and what's not. So the knife sheath is one of those bits that is very difficult to figure out what the hell are they talking about? Let me regress back to my North Louisiana country girl days. What the hell are you talking about? Right? That's the way we talk. Now, so the question is, one of the reasons why the knife sheath is so important to the discussion of this case is that it is the piece of evidence that puts Brian Kohberger in the house, right? That's the one piece of information that we have that actually puts Brian Kohberger on the third floor or second floor. Do you call it the basement or first floor? So he's either on the top floor. Let's call it the top floor. Puts him on the top floor. And the sheath was found. Okay, I do have some pedantic, preposterous, pretentious people who like to, I don't know if they're not listening to the videos. I can't figure out, but they'll go, oh, well, you should really read the affidavit because that's the facts. Yeah, but everything I said in my previous video was exactly what is in the affidavit. So why did you make a comment like that? So it's just these weird people, just negative people. There's some people that are oppositional by nature and they just can't help themselves. So the sheath, yes, the reporting is it was laying on the bed beside Maddie. The officer, one of the officers though, says that the sheath was actually, yes, maybe to the side, but what part of it was under Maddie. So the reason why it seems like a rather subtle, nuanced difference. But the reality is that is really important because the people that have fallen in love with Brian Kohberger, they will tell you that it was planted, that Kohberger is being set up, just like Chris Watts was set up, the whole 9 yards. That Kohberger is being set up, and that this one knife sheath with this little bit of DNA on the button, where you would close the sheath, and it was dropped on the bed by one of the police officers is what they're hoping that you'll take from their story. Well, it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It was a bit under her body, and yes, I agree. It's curious to ask yourself, why would the sheath is made? The sheath is designed so that you can carry the knife on your belt, and then your hands are free unless you need access to the knife, and you got really fast access, to the knife. So why would a serial killer take the whole entire sheath and knife off the belt? That just doesn't make sense. Agreed. And, if he's not if he's not a hunter, then maybe he didn't know that when you put your belt on, where you put your sheath on, it needs to be blocked by your belt loops on your pants, so that when you undo your belt, your sheath doesn't slide off the end of your belt, because the belt loop will act as a stopgap and stop the sheath from sliding off the end of the belt. So in somewhat, I've gone through this whole crime scene in my mind and on a piece of paper, and I've looked at so many different potentialities for how that night could have unfolded, which would have given you a different motivation each go around. And in some ways, perhaps there is an argument that still fits within the timeline of the affidavit. There's this argument that he was lying in wait specifically for Maddie, and that once the whole house quieted down and everybody was getting ready for bed, then he made his move. Now, a lot of what I think about, it comes from Papa Roger's post, and there was one in particular that I thought was just too detail oriented, and it just seemed so accurate. It was one of those things that when you read it, you thought, why would a troll go to this much trouble to describe something, knowing that all the cops and everything already know it's a lie? I mean, the specifics that were in that post were of such a nightmarish, horrific nature, like something of a horror movie. But if you're a guy that you've taken on this role as Papa Rogers because you want the attention that you earned, that you're the great one who took out those 4 lives, and you're not going to sit around and stand for them to blame other people when it's you that deserves the attention. That's that narcissistic, psychopathic deviant, right? So just like the letters written to, just like the letters written to newspapers and such, the Zodiac killer needed ownership. They needed that narcissistic supply. And after some time, it took on a very game-like quality. And the serial killer who is acting this particular type of psychology, that the serial killer that is engaging in these types of games, they become game master. They are the holder of all secrets. They know more than anyone else on the planet. So there's this godlike factor that can take over. And a lot of times that's what leads them to getting caught, because they get very stupid. They get very confident, they get cocky, but they're not happy. Like BTK went into hiding for a long time. He didn't taunt, he didn't put things out there. And the facts are, he would have gotten away with it. He would have died a free man, except the urges came back, and you don't know what prompted that. But for some reason, the urges came back, and he fired back up, and then it got bad. but nevertheless, if Kohberger is watching all of the hullabaloo, he's watching. I mean, come on, you guys made this case what it is on social media. We've had plenty of fantastic stories. I'm not talking about fantastic wonderful. I'm talking about fantastically grotesque, that fantastically abhorrent. I mean, some pretty nasty people doing some fairly nasty crimes. And it didn't turn into the circus that is the Brian Kohberger case or the Chris Watts case. That there's something about this case that some group, some element took hold of and turned it into almost like a video game quality attraction. I mean, in some channels that you go listen to, they've completely left the factual story behind. They have embraced a storyline that is just like fantasy, like complete fantasy. So if you are Brian Kohberger and you're watching all these people making money and growing channels and getting fame and notoriety, and he's sitting back going, well, what about me? Where is mine? Correct? So I think that was the birth of the Papa Rogers profile. And I think it was the game like quality. I think it was the same thing as like the letters to the newspapers and such. And so he's putting information out there, trying to get attention for himself, trying to get some of that narcissistic supply, some of that feedback, manipulating people in a very narcissistic manner that makes him feel all knowing and all powerful. And if you buy into that method of method of sociopathy, then you have to stop a minute and become Papa Rogers for a moment as BK. You have to become Papa Rogers for a moment, and you're saying, okay, well, I'm doing these postings and these communications on Reddit to get my attention, to get my fame, to get to own a piece of what I did, what I accomplished. And then if that's the goal of what you're doing and you legitimately know you're the killer, you did it, no, with no questions unasked, you did it. Why would you then slip up and describe the crime scene, the kill scene, in such horrific, nightmarish detail that the cops are going to be reading this and they're going, holy shit, we got our man. Oh my God, did you see what he just said about the ceiling fan in the bedroom? So then they know that this is in fact the killer that is online on Reddit and other places that are leaving these posts. So it becomes a game of cat and mouse, right? And if Papa Rogers is indeed BK, I don't see any reason why we would think he wouldn't be. If it was in fact BK, then he's not going to describe something that the cops are going to look at and go, oh no, that's not true. So that's not BK. No, that's not what the crime scene looked like. So it's not BK. He's not going to do that because the whole point of being Papa Rogers on social media is to taunt the police, to get that sadistic delight, to feed that narcissistic, psychopathic hunger. Correct? So all of that being said, they talked about Papa Rogers in documents. Well, why would they do that if it's not him? So all of that being said, this knife sheath becomes quite important. And this is only one. This is only one possibility that I've considered. It doesn't mean it's the only possibility. It's one possibility that is that is in my mind. Um, and that is that he was lying in wait, and that Maddie was the one. That Maddie was the one that he was looking for, right? And Maddie was a little salty at the Grubhub. We saw her. Only reason I bring that up is because it kind of shows you she's a tiny little petite thing, but she is no wallflower. She was very direct. She even used her body kind of as intimidation a little bit. She called out, what was his name, Joe. So we saw she's a little spitfire, right? She's tough. She's not scared. So it makes it even more. And she worked at the Mad Greek, and so you kind of think, well, maybe she did somehow have some kind of uh, disagreement or taunting related to Brian Kohberger, and he said, that's the one. I'm going to get her. She's going to be sorry she treated me that way, right? So anyway, back to the point. So if that's the case, then he goes into the house. He's lying in wait. He's waiting for her to come home, and he's patient. He waits a long time. He waits for the house to quiet down. He waits for everybody to go to bed. And then when Maddie was very intoxicated that night, and it probably would have been one of those deals where she was asleep before her head hit the pillow, then it would have been very easy for him to kill her and begin the torture, which is what he's there for. And in that case, you almost can sort of see where he might ceremoniously, take off the sheath and remove the knife and make like this kind of weird, movie scene, right? The Papa Rogers post describes Kaylee coming in and disrupting what it is that he's doing with Maddie. And he's furious, and he harms Kaylee, and he does what he does. And he's filled with fury at that point. He wasn't filled with fury before then. He was being motivated by that sadistic, punishing control, right? But when he's interrupted, now he's angry. And it makes me wonder is that when the little dog started barking, and maybe it was Xana that said someone is here. And so now he has to finish up quickly. And then when he heads down the stairs, then he encounters Xana and Ethan, and that's then how that happened. The reason that I go through that a little bit is to try to account for why is the sheath off the belt? That is a question. Was it a sexual assault? Was it more of a ceremonial kind of, he removed it intentionally to be very methodical and kind of melodramatic, like some of these weirdos will do? We don't know. We don't have any way of knowing. But the fact that it was partially under her body, that leads me to believe, no, it wasn't planted there. It was left there by the person that did this horrible thing. So it brings into question the sheath as evidence, because at this point now today, not only have we turned Xana into a drug dealer, which I don't believe at all, and I'm sorry that there's such a high level of victim blaming that's going on right now in this case, but not only have they turned Xana into a drug dealer, but they've also now said that the knife sheath isn't going to be evidence. That the knife sheath's not going to be evidence. Now, there were some moves early on that could have affected this whole thing. I haven't seen Peter Trago's comment on this, and that would be something that I would like for him to address, I guess. But I think early on there was this discussion that with the knife sheath, the amount of DNA evidence that was left on the snap was such a small amount that if they do the testing or when they did the testing, they used it up. There was none available left or something like that. So I'm not sure. I'm not an attorney and I don't pretend to be one. Um, but I do remember that being a point of focus. These were reputable news sources that were discussing this. So I think it would be interesting to hear. Of course, we're not going to get any good information because there's a gag order. But maybe if we had one of our real detectives or one of our real attorneys that might be able to go back and pull that up and kind of discuss it, would that have any effect on whether it could be used as evidence or not? Now, everybody wants to say, well, the people that get rather hysterical, oh, you got to go to the affidavit. The affidavit's the only thing that matters. Well, there's a lot of things that matter besides the affidavit, but I agree the knife sheath is not um, it's not it's not in the affidavit. What is in the affidavit is that they collected trash. They got a DNA profile for Brian's father. They didn't get any Brian's because Brian was bagging it and putting it in the neighbor's trash. But they were able to make the match between Brian's location in Pennsylvania and him visiting in Pennsylvania. So I don't know why the sheath, but nevertheless, I'm still listening to all this hubbub and people jumping up and down about how bad it is because the knife sheath isn't going to be in in the trial, and that's so horrible because that's the only evidence they have. No, they have a ton of evidence. But let's talk about in Texas, Watkins versus the state of Texas. This is a specific case where they address the disclosure of evidence to the defense, right? And so it's sort of the hallmark in Texas. You just turn it over. I mean that disclosure is the rule. It is not the exception. And so it's section 39.14A of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. And it requires the prosecution to disclose anything that constitute or contains evidentiary material to any matter involved in the action. And the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals recently interpreted the word material to mean just relevant, even vaguely relevant, while interpreting the phrase recently interpreted the word material to mean the equivalent of relevant, while interpreting the phrase any matter involved in the action as covering any number of subsidiary issues impacting the outcome of the proceedings. It doesn't say this has to be in the charging documents. Correct? The charging documents, the grand jury indictment, that's just a process where you've got supposedly unaffected people that are going through the evidence that the prosecution wants to give. Not all the evidence, just what they want to be used in terms of the actual, charge and indictment. And then the grand jury looks through it, and the standard is one of more likely than not. It is not beyond a reasonable doubt. So when they sat down and they looked through the evidence that was presented by the prosecution, but that is not all the evidence that the prosecution has. And when they go to trial, there will in fact be more evidence provided. Evidence that was not in the affidavit or part of the grand jury consideration. So the grand jury looks at this and they go, looking at what you have given us here, even though we know it's not everything, looking at what you've given us here, it certainly looks like it's more likely than not that Kohberger is the guy. And that's where you get your indictment, right? So, again, the word material is the equivalent of relevant, And the phrase is any matter involved in the action as covering any number of subsidiary issues impacting the outcome of the proceedings. So Texas prosecutors have to disclose virtually everything in their possession. Everything. The interpretation requires this, and more than that, they are mandated under a federal constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court in Brady versus Maryland. For some types of evidence, the statute does not require that evidence to meet materiality requirement. Evidence tending to negate the guilt or mitigate the punishment of a defendant must be disclosed, regardless of whether the evidence is considered material or requested by the defense. So this is silly. This is a nonsensical fantasy that the sheath, that is K-bar, and this young lady dies by a large knife, and there is straight edge wounds and serrated wounds where the skin is torn and ripped in an uneven manner compared to that clean knife edge cut. So that's why they named the K-bar. And so what, you've got this young lady who has been, eviscerated, and then right there beside her body, partially beneath her body, is a sheath for exactly that kind of knife. Oh, we're not going to use it. We don't have to turn it over. We're not going to use it. That's just silly, y'all. And frankly, I don't know why you're believing this. It's not true. They have to turn it over. Not only is it potentially relevant, it seems absolutely material. In Texas, they try to set up an open file policy where the prosecution has their file with all of their stuff in it that they've collected. The defense does have a login and access to that same file, which would have really been helpful related to Barry Morphew case, right? Linda Stanley, you may want to think about that kind of policy for, So the materiality language for the Watkins court is actually the language that was carried over from previous versions of the same Article 3914. It is considered case law, and trial courts have carried into practice even though the statute was amended. And there are these parallel articles in every state that most states, in terms of what they call material or evidence, it's pretty standard. It's not very unusual to look at something and go, oh, in Texas, that would be evidence. But in Idaho, that is not evidence. It's pretty, a lot of it is common sense, right? But this isn't even anything obscure, like a Milky Way bar. Oh, we found a Milky Way bar beside the victim. Could that be material? No way could that be material. You could have, that's a bit obscure. You could have a bit of an argument. But we're talking about a knife sheath for exactly the same knife that may have been used in the death of this young woman. I would say definitely material, even though it was not included in the affidavit. Right? I think there are two issues where this is concerned. I think the first issue is the sheath itself. I think the second issue is the supposed DNA, Brian Kohberger's DNA that was on the sheath. That's the second relevant thing, correct? No, DB, listen, oh my God. Okay. The sheath is evidentiary and it is material. It has been collected and it has a number and it is sitting with the prosecution's case. Cops have it, correct? The sheath has on it a piece of DNA, a very small amount, that proves that Brian Kohberger touched the sheath. That's number one. The sheath was not used in the affidavit for arrest. It was supposedly it was not part of the grand jury considerations. It does not mean that it's no longer there as a material and relevant piece of evidence. It's still there. It just hasn't been actively used at this point. Now, what we know is that there are people on YouTube that have begun telling everybody that they're not using the sheath. The sheath's not being used. It's getting thrown out. They're not using it. Why? Because it wasn't used for his arrest? Because it wasn't used in the charging documents? Because it wasn't used in consideration with the grand jury, which we don't know because the grand jury is secret. It seems like to me that these people that have started this rumor have said that, well, if they're not going to use the sheath for the indictment in the charging documents, then they must not be going to use it in trial. Why? They're so... I feel whiny. I can't be whiny. Letitia Stock overkilled that little boy, Gannon. And it was horrific. It was a nightmare. 3 different modes of death against this child. And we wait for years. All of this hullabaloo, all of her theatrics, all of her talking peanut butter jars. And then we finally get to court and it is unveiled for the first time. No one knew. No one had any idea this heifer gave that little boy a high level of hydrocodone. No one ever knew about the hydrocodone. He legitimately could have died of overdose. In addition to the beatings and the burns and the head injury and the gunshot wound. So the information that they provide to support the arrest, or the information that they provide to support the indictment or the grand jury or the preliminary hearing, that is not the sum total of all their evidence that they have. So we saw the same thing in the Lori Vallow case. What they presented early on for the arrest affidavit, there was so much more presented at trial. So I don't care that they did not use the sheath and the DNA. I don't care that they didn't use that in the arrest documents. I don't care. I don't care if the grand jury did not consider it. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is this. It's still in evidence with the prosecution. Or, well, I mean, both sides have to have it. The police collected it. It is evidence. And now both sides get it. But this group on YouTube, they look at it like if the sheath, because the DNA from the knife sheath was really the only connecting link that would put Brian Kohberger into the King Road house. That's why it's such a pivotal piece of evidence, is it places his DNA into the King Road house, right? And so if it wasn't used in the charging documents, now they're all saying, oh, they're not going to use it. They're not going to use it, Must be something wrong with it. Maybe they were trying to set him up. Maybe it's a red herring. Maybe no, they just decided they didn't need to use it. They had plenty of other evidence to put it for the charging documents and then later the grand jury. They had plenty of other evidence that was very straightforward and very simple, and that's what they went with because the standard is much lower. It more likely than not, versus when they get to trial, it'll have to be beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's where they're going to pull out the big guns. They can't just say we have DNA that puts in there, because then you've got to have a trail of geneticists, DNA experts to come in and explain the DNA and explain how they got it and explain how they matched it. That's for trial. So I said, it wasn't very popular when I said that this whole deal about how he got fired from his teaching assistantship. Remember that? There was a lot of information that came out online. Someone was putting this information out online that he had all these troubles. He had these rehabilitation plans. And I kept thinking, but wait a minute. Aren't there privacy laws in higher education? In healthcare, we have HIPAA. And what do we have in the universities and educationally? Same standard of HIPAA, right? So the FERPA laws are kind of parallel to HIPAA, except it's related to education and personal privacy. Hey, you are to me. Personal privacy, privacy and education kind of issues. And there's a little bit of overlap there, but I don't want to get into that. So I said at the time that I was going on, I'm going like, well, when you read the letter, it looks like it could be a letter to alert and establish a rehabilitation process and reset some goals and try to get back on the right track. I mean, it looks official, but then again, it didn't. I did a video about it, and I kind of went through and said, well, you wouldn't see a college or university wouldn't say this, or this wouldn't be their domain. They wouldn't bring that up in an official letter. And so, still it just kept going on. And I thought, well, maybe it is real. Maybe, I mean, I don't know who in the world at the, if I'm sitting in a university office, I've got a student who is failing to perform academically or in their assistantship role. And it's so egregious that I'm going to demand that they have a rehab plan. If a reporter calls and asks me, you're going to have to pry my lips open to even get me to admit that student is even at our university. There'll be no confirming or denying that I even know Brian Kohberger, much less whether we're about to fire him, because that's going to open you and the university up to lawsuits, federal lawsuits. That's the kind of lawsuit you never recover from. It's the end of your career. And so I keep thinking, well, who would be dumb enough to put this out there? Who would be stupid enough at that university to even put this letter out there? I cannot even, my brain, I just couldn't. I just didn't, it just didn't seem real to me for a lot of good, solid reasons. I mean, this is an area I know a lot about. And lo and behold, guess what we find out now? Lo and behold, it was all a hoax. The letter wasn't real. It was made up by some crazy lady on YouTube. Well, not YouTube, but social media, TikTok maybe. So letter's not real. At this point, you and I, we have no way of knowing if he was actually fired or not. Ashley Banfield reported that he was fired from his assistantship, And the reality is, she doesn't know any more than we do because it all came from that one letter. Listen to me. These universities are not going to report on Brian Kohberger's academic success or failure. It is a violation of federal law. The only people that could have put that out was Brian himself by way of his sisters. That's it. And when you look at the search warrants, they had a search warrant for his office, number 12, and they went in and they collected things, didn't they? Didn't they get things out of his office? Okay, well then why were there things in his office if he had been fired? Exactly, you are too mean. Thank you. You are too mean said exactly. The institution places their federal funding at jeopardy when the law is violated. That's right. My case deals with WSU, and I can say that university reveals nothing ever, no matter what. I'm with you. You are to me. It's just not. And here's the other part. You are to me because you know this area. Have you ever seen a situation in higher education where they had a student who was not performing either academically or in their assistantship role? They're not performing. They get notice that they're not performing, and then 2 or 3 months later, they're fired with no opportunity to improve their performance. Have you ever seen a timeline like that? That process from informing a student to trying to work through the issues with them during the rehabilitation period of time to when they're ultimately finally let go, which is a legal process, at least a year. It could even be 18 months or more. So this is just, it's turned into the Wild West. It's fun. I'm okay with it. Y'all, we like the crazy, extreme stories. I like them too. But when you're talking about evidence, you're talking about a piece of really material, germane evidence. No, they can't just say, "Oh, well, we're not going to use it, so we're not going to give it to the defense." They can't do it legally. They can't do it. Look at Linda Stanley, the problem she ran into in the prosecution of Barry Morpheus. Same kind of games, and you can say, "Oh, well, they." The knife sheath could be exculpatory, and so they're not going to use it, so then they don't have to turn it over to the defense. Wrong again. You're wrong again, because anything, no matter what it is, if on any level it could be potentially, not is exculpatory, mildly potentially exculpatory, it must be turned over. There's no second choices. And so essentially, if you're a good prosecutor, if you're a good attorney, you're just not going to want to have these technicalities and these the games. You're not going to want to deal with this. You're looking at getting your case overturned if you win. You're looking at getting your case overturned. And so if you're good at what you do and you're legitimately practicing law and not just being some kind of state sanctioned con artist, then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to turn over your discovery, and then you're going to let the chips fall where they may. Right? The Collins are involved in this case, and so it's still an open case. Collins being the is that the owner of the house, or was that the other roommate that never took possession of the room? Hey, Marilyn Landis. Exculpatory, Jana, means that it would be information that would show that the defendant didn't do it. Like proof of an alibi. You could, if your defendant said, well, I was in Canada at the time of the crime, but I don't remember the name of the hotel I stayed at. And I can't find my bill where I paid for it, but I know I was there. And then the prosecution's detectives, they find the hotel bill. They find the hotel bill. They can see where the guy paid for it. They've got cameras, from the hotel that show that it's him paying his bill. You can't just withhold that from the defense. You must turn it over to them. Even if they don't have it, you don't have any choice. You must turn it over to them. And then, obviously in that instance, you would end up, dropping the charges. But the prosecution does not get to decide what is exculpatory. Exactly, you are to me. They turn over what they have. And 100% that knife sheath is in the evidence in terms of collected, during the investigation in terms of collected evidence. They have it. And they must turn it over to the defense, period. And so even the point of me bringing that up is this: even if the prosecution makes a decision not to include the knife sheath in their prosecution of Brian Kohberger, the defense has access to that knife sheath, and they can use it. They can introduce it, even if the prosecution does not. Does that make sense? The group from Munnsville, New York, tied to a lot of BS going on with kid scams in the waffle. That's why Barry got off, because he didn't turn over all they had. Oh yeah, no, it violated timelines. They wouldn't turn over their discovery promptly. That hell, they had people. Nobody took a damn note in the entire investigation. Nobody ever took a note. They took meetings and never wrote about the meetings. It was a bunch of yahoos that were not prepared to go up against a real attorney. Links to Robin Hood. Okay, so I think, does that answer my question? Kohberger's Kabar sheath, is it in evidence? Marguerite, it is entertaining, much like going to the movie and watching Star Wars is entertaining. It is interesting, but at the end of the day, all of this panic about, or questions about the knife sheath and whether it's being used or what, it doesn't matter if the prosecution uses the sheath or not in their prosecution. It does not matter. The reality is that the defense has access to the knife sheath, and if they want to introduce it, they can. Now, I had several videos that I put together. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so let me make sure I'm saying there. Let me go back to my notes. So, like I said, the one thing I think that is important, about the knife sheath, is that bit of DNA on the snap. That is one of the few, perhaps what some think is the only connection. Where is my? There it is. That is the only connection that puts Brian Kohberger into the house at 1122 King Road, correct? But there's something else besides the knife sheath. And it happened the night before classes started in the fall of 2022. So those of you connected to universities, Y'all know, time warp back, or if you're a professor, what happens the night before classes start in a 4-year university? It is party central, correct? Now, they did have their big block party the next weekend on the 27th. But the night of the 21st, that is a significant night because classes for the fall quarter started August the 22nd in 2022. The reason I bring this up is this. On the night of August the 21st, Brian Kohberger's phone locked into the router at 1122 King Road, and he was using their cellular network for more than an hour, or right at an hour. An hour. He was on their cell service. They're on their internet. Right? So on what you would have seen if you had been there, what you would have seen on the night of the 21st with classes starting on the 22nd, this is fall quarter, you would have seen a campus and a surrounding neighborhood with just activity everywhere you looked. Everywhere you looked. There would have been kids out everywhere. They would have been playing music. They would have been in the bars. They would have been at restaurants. They would have all been so excited about all their friends being back. Number one, after having the summer off, they'd all be back. So they'd all be happy, looking for each other, seeing each other and whatnot. And they would have all been planning and gearing up for what? Rush. The Greek community would have been looking at Rush. And so all the new incoming freshmen, they would have been out there looking like the big fish to all the fraternities and sororities. They would have been looking to see, oh, I think, this girl looks like she would fit in. This guy looks like we would want him. And so it is one of the most exciting and intense day before classes actually begin. He was there, y'all. Instead, now he's starting listen, put yourself in his shoes, okay? He is starting his PhD program. This joker has come from across the country, from Pennsylvania to Washington, where he's starting a PhD program. Don't you think he would have been wanting to, rub elbows with his new colleagues, start making friends with the future doctors of criminal justice of the world? Wouldn't you have thought that? He wasn't. He wasn't anywhere near WSU. He was at King Road. He was at 1122 King Road, to be specific. And he was on their router. He was on their internet network for an hour. Wrap your mind around that. Now, question is, he could blend in. They're right across the street from the fraternity. That the whole Queen Road and King Road were lots of party houses there. So there was a lot of those kids, walking and talking and running around with each other. He could have blended in easily. Did he go in their house? I tend to think no. I don't think he went in their house. I think that he was probably sitting in the car watching. That's what I think he was doing. And I think he realized, wow, I'm close enough. I can actually get on their router. See what I mean? So, there is, that puts him, if not in the four walls, it definitely puts him within range of their router. And that's a little too close for comfort, right? So, yes, the sheath is important. I'm not saying that it's not important. It is important. But no, it's not being like forgotten. They didn't throw it in the trash bin of history, forgotten. It's in evidence. It's been collected at a crime scene. They can't just throw it away, people. And whether the prosecutor chooses to use that or not in his prosecution, that's up to him, but that does not stop the defense from using the sheath in their case. Correct? All right. He might need a password to get onto it, but some people will leave their routers open, Net Detective. Or Net Detective, maybe he was at their party. Maybe he was there with the whole group and he said, "Hey man, do y'all have a password for the Wi-Fi? I need to get on." Or he had already snuck into the house and gotten the password off the bottom of the router. I mean, that's a fairly chilling, frightening thought. But regardless of how he ended up doing it, he didn't just briefly touch touch the network and then leave. He was on it for an hour. Yep. All right. So, lots of people super emotional about this, for a lot of different reasons. And I think anytime that I run across someone who's just aggressive and telling you, "Oh, you're stupid," whenever you see that, that doesn't inspire confidence that they really know what they're talking about, right? It's a way to shut down conversation. But if what you know is factual, why wouldn't you want to have a conversation? If they are not turning over the genetic testing, they will be barred from using the DNA on the sheath. They don't have the 21222. They don't have a choice in terms of turning over the testing. It's not a choice. They are bound by law to turn it over. And if they refuse to turn it over, then the judge can sanction them severely. That you can't play. That's why the prosecution of Barry Morphew fell apart, is because the prosecutors were playing around with discovery. I just think they were incompetent. I don't think they were trying to like get one over on the defense. I think they were just purely incompetent. The state cannot just say this is his DNA without providing how they came to that conclusion. Of course, 100% 222. And they have explained how they came to that conclusion. They know how they did it. They gathered the father's DNA in Pennsylvania. They compared the father's DNA against Brian's DNA, and that's how they made the connection. I mean, they've explained that. The only thing they didn't do, 222, is they did not use the knife sheath for the arrest. And we don't know if the grand jury used the knife sheath because the grand jury proceedings were secret. The sheath itself may not have been turned over yet, but the testing was used to make the arrest, so I believe the testing was already turned over. The sheath is important to us because it was released after the arrest, and it put the public's mind at rest that they had the right guy. My cue is not their cue. They still can't figure out real work versus their crimes, plots, and scams mixing in gender BS when I'm not gay. What? Oh, I don't understand what you just said. I don't know what that means. Oh, I can't get. Okay. So I, yeah, thank you, Shalimar. That really, I don't know if y'all can tell, my brain is overheating trying to figure that one out. Okay. Um, we don't know you are to mean. And I don't know that anybody said anything about gayness or gender stuff. I don't know what that's about. It has to be specific how they came to the conclusion. Same with a drunk driving case. The state cannot simply say the person was drunk without saying specifically how they came to their conclusion. What do you mean to with the knife sheath? I am, Jana. Thank you so much. Yeah. What do you mean? Same with the drunk driving case. The state cannot simply say the person was drunk without saying specifically how they came to their conclusion. Well, how do you know someone's drunk? 222. You stop them, you stop them and then you think, gosh, I smell a lot of alcohol, number one. And then the person is slurring their words, number two. And their pupils are enormous, number three. And so, as a law enforcement officer, you say, gosh, I really believe this person who I saw driving this car is probably intoxicated. So now I need to do a DUI test. And so then you ask them to get out of the car. You ask them to go jump through all the, hoops and prove it. If they refuse to do that, then you transport them and you take blood at the hospital to make your proof, right? So you use it to conduct an investigation. But exactly the same thing unfolded related to the knife sheath and Brian Kohberger and why they think that he did it. One of the strongest pieces of evidence that they have against him, 222, is the cellular evidence combined with the visual from the cameras around town. Though the intersect between the cell phone results and the visual from cameras around town, they got him. Now, what I will entertain this challenge a little bit in terms of what we don't know, what the evidence that they've shown us so far hasn't shown us is, was Brian acting alone or was Brian acting in concert with another bad actor? We don't know that, correct? But I think what we absolutely do know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that he connected to their internet service, their router. He connected to their router. He was by their house 12 times or so, always in the early morning hours of the night. And we think there has been some suggestion that perhaps he collected IDs. We don't know if he collected IDs of the victims or some other people, but they did confiscate 2 IDs that were in a black glove in a box. So, no, incorrect. They use a machine. They have to prove calibration of the machine and the person's trained to run the machine. So what you're talking about there, I agree, 222. But what you're talking about there is now you're talking about the defense who is interjecting doubt. It's just, you're talking about doubt. It's 2 different conversations. There's a conversation for more likely than not, this guy did it, as compared to having a defense attorney. And then it's the defense attorney's job to get to that, no, we have reasonable doubt, and here it is. All right. Owner of Earth, I think you may need to sleep. Maybe it's time for you to go to sleep for a little while. Oh my God, it's officially the woman with the longest name on social media. How are you, Crystal? The consistency time dates that his phone pings will help convict him. He is either guilty or he is the unluckiest person I've ever seen. Crystal, thank you. That was a very rational way to state it. Thank you. But a bad machine doesn't exclude blood testing. Yeah, it's just all of this nonsense, all of this it's all introducing doubt, which is what the defense does. That is the defense's path, journey, goal, destiny. Hi Eddie, how are you? Don't worry. Be happy. I don't care if it's televised or not. I would rather not. I'd rather wait to watch him fry. Welcome, Big Ups. A ray of sunshine as always. Kathy R., I think they're paying people to derail these conversations for the sake of the defense. Paid opposition. Kathy, that is so interesting you said that, because that in fact did go through my mind yesterday when we were going through Houston. I thought, some of these stories are so categorically inaccurate in terms of fact based. Where is it coming from? I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm not sure that the defense would pay people to do this. I think it's simply people who are trying to cause a spectacle and capitalize on the excitement. Look and see where all the views are going. Look and see which channels all the people are going to. Those are the same people that were involved in the Chris Watts dramas. You are not, Big Ups. I mean, there are some pings that may be indicative of the general area. I do believe that there are other ways to interpret. But yeah, I agree, Shalmar. But listen, this whole idea of the pings in general areas, that's why it's so critically important to know that they cross-reference that to cameras in the area, and you can actually see his car at the location that the cell phone information says it will be. They didn't say just cell. They didn't do just camera. They put them together. Yeah, Barry Morphew, the most unlucky person in the world. No, Allie, we know the truth. We know the truth. The only Allie, here's the only other possibility that I came up with, playing devil's advocate. What if Barry is innocent? What if legitimately it's exactly what the story that he told, well, no, not story he told, but that he was not the one to hurt his wife, right? That's the only, there's one other possibility according to the things that can be verified. There's only one other possibility I can come up with, and here it is. What if Suzanne died? Now, notice I didn't say got murdered. What if she died? And there's ways to die. Maybe somebody accidentally was having a temper tantrum and accidentally hurt her, pushed her. She hit her head on the fireplace. It was an accident, just a domestic disagreement. And I'm not talking about Barry. And she died accidentally. Or what if she accidentally overdosed on medications? Or what if she on purpose overdosed on medications? What if she died? Okay. Then, if we go with that idea that she died, what would be the motivation that Barry would have for covering it up? So that he's not guilty of her murder, but perhaps he's guilty of a cover up. You see? And so you think, well, okay, well, let's say accidentally, let's say maybe she got into an argument with one of her kids and she got pushed, she hit her head on the ground. Just fantasy, pure fantasy here. Would a father be motivated to try to protect their children from going to jail? I would. It would be very, very hard in that situation. Accidental death, you might try to cover it up, right? So that's number one, maybe. Or if Suzanne may have made a decision that she did not want to continue living, and because of the church background and because of the children and the family, maybe Barry was motivated to hide that. Maybe he didn't want anybody to know that she harmed herself. But in both of those cases, here's where it breaks down, Allie. In both of those situations, you're asking me to believe that Barry Morphew is an overtly altruistic, pro-human person. And is there anything about him that shows that about him, that he's this overly empathetic, loving guy? Better than blaming it on the attitude. Oh, altitude. Sorry. No, me neither, Allie. So, yeah, I've seen that. People in Colorado die because of the altitude. Yeah, it's like, well, it's not K2. Colorado. That's blasphemous, Allie. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. All right. Oh, that's Big Up. Big Ups is the altruistic, overwhelmingly loving guy. Okay, y'all get that right, ladies. Big Ups is the man. Okay. All right. So, hey, Lena's Terra Oracle. Welcome. Good to have you. All right. So, again, I do this video related to the whole sheath conversation and whether it's just the prosecutors have flushed it down the toilet and didn't give it to the defense. That's categorically not even possible. But if the prosecution doesn't think they need to use the sheath in the prosecution of Brian Kohberger, then they won't use it. But that doesn't stop the defense from being able to introduce it for their case. Correct? So you just live there, Allie. I know, right? Ugh, there's a cabin in Marble for sale, Allie. I want to buy it so bad. They are trying to make BK the victim, but what's the role of the defense? That is their role, isn't it? I heard Peter Tragos say in one of his recent lives that the defense does engage in victim shaming, that the victim will, the defense will blame the victim because they want to try to alienate the jury from feeling like it's their job to avenge the death of the victim. They want to put distance between the victim and the jury, right? And I thought, gosh, it's such an uncomfortable concept, but I get it. So yes, I definitely think you do. They will look for weaknesses in the victim to sort of play up, to try to, you know, um, confuse the jury, or at the very least break the alliance that the jury has to the prosecution or to the victim. I think definitely, they'll try to do that. That was actually a part. That was one thing that they really had no way to do in the Lori Vallow case, and I don't know how they're going to do it in the Daybell case, because there's no way to turn JJ and Tylee and Tammy. There's no way to turn them into unsympathetic people. They were absolutely violated in an evil and just sadistic manner. It was organized, and it was planned, and it was methodical, and it's just the height of evil. So I think Chad Daybell isn't fooled to go to trial. I think he is a fool to go to trial. I do. I would be, if I were him, I'd be totally making a deal to get the death penalty off the table. Yeah. Oh, did you hear him, Hybrid? Yeah. If Barry is innocent, I'm Queen Elizabeth. We have some people that think they're Queen Elizabeth, Lady of Angels. When DNA evidence is offered at trial, evidence relevant to the reliability of that evidence, including relevant evidence of laboratory error, contamination, or sample mishandling, should also be administered. And it will be 222. They haven't submitted the DNA evidence. Are y'all getting the feeling 222 may be an AI, maybe a bot? I'm thinking they may be a bot. Jules, we need to hear your speculation on Morphew Funeral Home. I did a whole video on that, big ups. The whole kit and caboodle. You people, you guys living in Colorado, y'all are the ones that need to go to the funeral home. You know what I mean? Y'all need to be going and making friends with that guy and finding out just how much he'd help you out to disappear some troublesome debris for how much money. Welcome to 1222 Esquire. There's Team Doocy Doo 222. You guys are killing me with all these twos. Let's up the game, people. Let's go to threes, okay? Yeah, Jana found. How about I'll go back through and I'll find the video and I'll replay it. No Esquire needed. There you go. Okay. With all due respect, 21222. Okay. So I'm curious, 21222. Have your digits any significance, or are you one of those people that puts your hand on the keyboard and goes middle finger, left finger, middle finger, left finger, ring finger, and that's your username? Because I do that. I'll like go back and forth with my pointer and my middle finger back and forth and give myself a name. Remember, Jules, they know more than we think, and they are watching us. I'm scared, big ups. Who are you talking about? Are we talking about the aliens again? I will, Jana. I'll find it when I get finished with this live, and I'll repost it. Martin Smallwood! You can't see the forest for the damn trees. I know. No, it's actually code for my name. Oh my God. So you're a binary? 21222. How are you doing, Martin? Well, the aliens have always been here. Yeah. I've had 2 encounters in my life with unexplained craft. One time we were where were we? Oh, South America. We were in Venezuela. We were at my brother's baseball game. We were at this park. all the expats had a baseball, league. And me and about four other kids were playing in this big sandbox. There was a adjacent like playground, and we were I think, how old was I? I was 10, maybe 11 years old. Um, and we were playing in this sandbox, and somebody said, what is that? And then we looked over, and it was this. I don't even know what shape it was. It was just this group of like different colors, like light bulbs, like little different different colored light bulbs, and it came right over, and it stopped. Not even as high as an airplane, a lot closer than what would be an airplane, and sat there for a few minutes. And like, I just remember how hard my heart was pounding. I was terrified. And it didn't like rush off. It just continued then along its way. And I just remember jumping up and running like hell. I'm talking about running like hell, and ran straight over, to where my dad was standing there with a bunch of other guys. And um, they were like, "What is wrong with y'all?" We were all freaking out. I was going, "What is wrong with y'all?" And I finally, as I started to tell him, I thought, what the hell are you going to say? Like, how are you going to explain that? I couldn't even say anything. So I just went and sat down by my mom. I sat with my mom, and then the game, I don't remember the game finishing or anything like that. But then we got in the car. I remember leaving, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I'll never forget. It's so weird the way memories are. But as I was sitting in the back seat, that song came on. What was it? If you could read my mind, love, what a tale if my thoughts could tell. Right? That song came on, and it was right then I said, I think we saw a spaceship. And I remember my mom looking at me and going, what are you talking about? And I said, we saw a spaceship. And then I don't remember the rest of it, but it was very strange. And then the second time was just like 6 or 7 years ago. I was in Kentucky, Vanceburg, Kentucky. Who knows where Vanceburg, Kentucky is? And it is out in the middle of the nowhere. And it was during the day. It wasn't at night. It wasn't spooky or anything. It was the middle of the day. And I was pulling into the gas station to get gas. And I thought I saw something in the distance, and I went out and I was waiting on my gas to pump, and I kept watching it. It looked like I'll tell you what it looked like. You know what your Apple AirPods look like? That smooth white plastic. It looked like that, but it was almost exactly in the shape of an egg. And it's moving along, and I'm watching it the whole time I'm putting gas in, and I'm thinking, well, what is that? Is it an optical illusion? Is it actually much bigger than it looks, or is it smaller than it looks? And I got in my car and I went to drive away. And then I realized when I was in the car about to pull out that it came right over the trees, and I could tell how close it was and how big it was, right? And it was probably, realistically, it was probably a little bit bigger than maybe a Volkswagen Bug. And I rolled my window down, and it was smooth. There were no markings. There was no light. There was nothing. It was just this perfectly smooth, white, round shaped egg. And I watched it pass over, and there was not a sound. Nothing. Nothing. And I did get a video of it. So I don't know what it was, but I saw it. Pam Frenchman saw something when she was 18. Giant aliens are there, nothing to be scared of. This is all way too weird for the hybrid Pisces. I'm still reeling from all the post-COVID changes. I'm not ready for the damn aliens. Listen to this, hybrid Pisces. The new research, more than 30% of people have refused to return to post-COVID life. Is that unbelievable? That 2-3 year period of time in our lives, changed 1/3 of the population. 1/3. It's crazy. Crazy stuff. Suzanne Morphew has been pulled from Reddit for good. Wow. Wow. The Greys are the good aliens and they want to promote humanity. I tried to read the book Communion and ended up not finishing it, sleeping with the lights on, eyes wide open. It is very, look, let me hold on, let me see how I want to say this. I got to be careful. I know a child who even last week was wearing their mask in school, crying, terrified to take their mask off. What do you think about that? Terrible, isn't it? Absolutely terrible. Martin, in the beginning, I said that SOB was a made man. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Who the hell's protecting him? Wow. Oh, I love them. Big ups. Yeah. Hey, Christina. Oh, you don't want to get me started about the mask and vaccines. I don't trust the government. God. No, Martin. No, can we be honest? He's not really a very sophisticated, eloquent person. You know what I mean? I mean, you could say there are people that walk among us, that are really highly interconnected people, and they have secrets, and they're bigger than the rest of us in terms of national security or whatnot. Not Barry. Let's be honest. He's pretty simple guy. So what the hell? I'm just going to sit here and listen because I don't want to. Christina, just come on in and piss people off. I've been doing it from the beginning. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Hey, Charlie Faith, how are you? Brian's weird face on the screen is scarier than aliens. That's another thing that I find interesting. 95% of the people that see a video of Brian Kohberger or a photograph of him, they instantly recoil as if he was some kind of venomous viper. And then you've got the 1% who think, oh, he's so handsome. He's so pretty. I'm like, you don't get out much, do you? Spent years not leaving the house in lockdown, felt right to me. Yeah, there were a lot of memes like that, Elizabeth. People saying social distancing. I've been doing this forever. Yeah. It's the eyes you are to mean. Ceresia Norton. Pam Frenchman, my uncle had a telescope and we watched a main object that had lights racing into. Whoops. Where did you go? My uncle had a telescope and we watched a main object that had lights racing into and away from at unbelievable miles per hour. I'm not against vaccines for other kids, just my son. He's allergic to the aluminum in them. Yeah, Christina, my son, he had a severe reaction to the MMR. And so he didn't get that again. He just had one. That makes me sad because it means this child is completely lost in the sauce as far as I'm concerned. All right. allergies to eggs, you've got to be careful as well. Okay. All right. We have burned up an hour and a half, my friends. I think I'll end this live. Martin, I'm really sad to hear about the Suzanne Morphew discussion board being killed. It's very sad. It's incredible. Really incredible. Is that what happened? Do you think, Martin? Did they name? Maybe they named Reddit in the lawsuit. That's a good point, Hybrid Pisces. Oh, I had a good time, Charlie Faith. It was so late when we got home last night. We didn't get home last night till about midnight, I think. And we're old people. I'm an old person. I'm old. I'm an old lady. Give me my walking cane. I can meet people and immediately tell you what they are all about. It's a weird feeling. Bill's like that too, Diane. Sure enough, 2 years later, I had to jump out of a moving car to get away from him because he was trying to kill me. God, it's terrifying, Christina. So sorry you went through that. So sorry. And that's something that breaks my heart about Suzanne Morphew. The things that she lived through. And then when she's, it's such it's the common tale of domestic violence. When you finally had enough and you finally find your courage to get out, that's when the bastards get you. And then to have an entire state just turn their back on you. It's your kids, everybody just turned their back on her. It's horrible. Horrible, horrible. And can I ask it? Well, I better not say that. I'm going to end up getting sued. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. All right. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you coming and listen to me run my mouth and wax poetic. But I tell you what I will do, Jana. I'm going to go back now and I'm going to find my video related to the funeral home in Colorado, and I will. I've got to figure. I'll guess I can edit it. If I edit it, then I could re-upload it after I've edited it. And so let me edit it down a little bit, and then I'll re-upload it, Jana, and then you'll be able to watch it. Okay? I'll do it right now. I promise. You have a great day, big ups. Just a coincidence, I would say. Not just her sub got pulled. Okay, well, man, that's very disappointing. Says a message from the moderator regarding the plan by Reddit to kill off third-party apps and the proposed blackout of subreddits. Tomorrow the plug will be pulled. This will be my first Reddit sub. I have spent a huge amount of time here researching, reading, writing, thinking. It's been many things to me. I'm 84 last month. My wife and I moved into assisted living. We have 5 children, a bunch of grands, and a great grand. I spent most of my career as a corporate executive with a division of IBM. It's kind of sad, isn't it? They're taking away his hobby. It's terrible. If this sub does not return, I sure will miss you all. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's so sad. Ugh. One day Barry will hear a knock on the door, or he will see red and blue lights flashing behind him. One day Suzanne's remains will be found, and her family will be able to give her a proper burial. One day justice will prevail, and I'll be thinking about all of you. Man, Fistful of Glitter, you are awesome. You're the bomb. And then we've got Dope and Diamonds. That is not me, I promise. Dope and Diamonds says the sub will come back even if Speezy can't successfully pull his head out of his own ass. I'm going to follow Fistful of Glitter and be friends with Fistful of Glitter. All right. It's a member of Mensa. Oh. I'm going to follow Dope and Diamonds too. Oh, I'm already following Dope and Diamonds. I'm trying to follow all the people. Trying to follow all the people that were on this Reddit that I read. Praying Mantis Mirage. Let me get that one. All right. Are you following them too? Zealous. Follow. All right. Sorry. Thank y'all for bearing with me. I wanted to get those before they erase it. I was in the middle of a series of Suzanne. I give up on this speech to text. I was supposed to say it's a beautiful day, Jules. Thank you for spending some time with us. No. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. The funeral idea will blow your mind. Well, was it a bad argument, Big Ups? I mean, the guy just had bodies laying everywhere, partial bodies. Well, it's kind of a crazy story. And he's right there in Salida. Well, little town outside of Salida, but okay. So next thing I'm going to do today is I'm about to go and pull my video on the funeral home in Colorado. And I'll have to edit it, and I'll have to wait for the edits, and then I'll re-upload it, Jana, so that you can watch it. Okay? Be easy to find that way. Everybody, Martin, thank you for letting me know about Reddit. There's people on there that I want to stay in contact with, so I'm glad you told me. So you are a sweetheart as usual. Thank you so much. Okay, are you a mod, Martin? I thought I made you a mod. I have to go to YouTube to do that. Hold on. Oh, I don't want to use that video. I'll do it in a minute. All right. Y'all are awesome. I appreciate you coming here and spending time with me. And otherwise, I hope the sun is shining on you wherever you happen to be. And I'll see y'all tonight. And we're going to talk about Brian Kohberger and narcissism.